See this? Earbuds plugged into my laptop, and I just finished recording my video. There it is. This is my video editor, and there's no sound because my computer thinks that this is a microphone and thus turns off the internal microphone, and there's no sound. Outstanding. So here we go, take number 2.
Hey everybody, John the Other here, obviously. And I'm responding today to the flavor of a couple of comments that were from my last video of guys saying more or less, how can we have a lovely day, John, when your videos are laying on us this heavy trip, this extremely depressing dystopian, a brutal interpretation of the news that doesn't seem to have very much light or happiness or optimism in it, and you're not even providing a path for anybody to navigate through any of this stuff. We're all depressed and sad now after watching your videos. Okay, fair enough. However, I do think that although I don't necessarily explicitly get into how can you deal with this, there is this sign behind me, and I want to suggest that for the 97% of the viewers of this channel who are men, MGTOW is actually a way to have a path through this chaotic, dystopian, anti-civilization, anti-human ethos that seems to be dominating the mainstream. The departure from due process, the gleeful destruction of the undermining of Western civilization by our elected politicians, and so on. And I'm going to use Jordan Peterson's 12 rules to demonstrate that MGTOW, in fact, is a path through all that stuff for men. Now, the 3% of the audience of my channel who are women, what are you even doing here? Like, this isn't for you. What are you, weird? Anyway, let's not get too distracted. There's a couple of rules in Peterson's rules which, when I read the chapter headings, jumped out at me as these are extremely MGTOW focused rules. Now, notwithstanding that Jordan Peterson said that MGTOW guys on a MGTOW path are pathetic weasels, I'm going to forgive him for that. He did back away from it, and I kind of understand where that was coming from, because there's when you look at the MGTOW channels, there's a lot of talk about sort of life of recreation, the playing video games, relaxation, working minimum number of hours to get by so that you don't have anything for the government or an ex-wife to take away from you. Yeah, I can see how if you thought that was the whole picture, pathetic weasels might be sort of a reasonable assessment, but it takes a little bit of a deeper look to see that that's just sort of a very, very surface layer. So I'm going to look at a couple of Peterson's rules that seem to me to be very, very MGTOW focused, particularly Rule 3 and Rule 6. Now, Rule 3 says, make friends with people who mean the best for you. And that's obvious, self-evidently and very obviously good advice. But there's an other side, there's the back side to that rule. And the back side is, avoid people, or in fact, don't make friends with people or associate with those who mean to do you harm, or who are flippant or casual about seeing you come to a negative outcome, or who are indifferent to your suffering. Because we're in a society right now where there is some pretty strong and not very subtle messaging towards men that they should in fact not protect themselves from people who mean to exploit them or do them harm, or who are flippant and casual about their suffering. In particular, the push from the mainstream for men to get married. Where have all the good men gone? Why don't you man up and get married? Ignoring, in fact, the human pulping, grinding machine of the family court, that when you look at the other side, what comes out is a smashed and broken human being whose life is ruined and is in debt and then doesn't get separated from their kids. And, the suicide rate of men after divorce is like 10 times higher than the suicide rate of men who've not been divorced or who've not been married, which is already 4 times higher than normal for the rest of the population. So, yeah, do pay attention to the other side of make friends with people who mean the best for you. Avoid, and in fact, start creating some filters in your life to not just keep them out, but to identify those who are casual and flippant and unconcerned with a negative outcome, or who are entertained by your suffering. Rule number 3, is clearly a MGTOW rule. The other one is Rule 6. Set your house in perfect order before you attempt to set the world in order, before you attempt to reorganize the world. Now that's, for me, a very MGTOW rule. Now, it's a kind of a general rule, so I'm going to give a very personal interpretation of it. I was, for a long time, a men's rights activist. Now, men's rights and MGTOW are both basically concerned with the same group of problems. The male suicide rate, the homelessness problem, the indifference to male suffering, the brutalization of children, the mutilation sexually of male infants, the family court, the sentencing problem, etc., the workplace death rate. I'll bore you if I go through all of them. You're probably bored already. Well, you can, as an MRA, as I used to try to do, engage the world in trying to care about or maybe rectify some of these problems or have social policies that are corrective. And the result is you'll get mocked and made fun of and taunted, and your misery will become the entertainment for the people taking delight in your misery. And you won't advance those goals at all. But what you can do instead is, with the same concern for the same problems, fix your own life. You can change your life to immediately solve all those problems for yourself. You can still hope for the best for other people if you want, but instead of trying to engage the world in caring about things it clearly doesn't care about, you can fix all those problems, like right now, right away, in your own life by plotting a personal MGTOW path for yourself. So Rule 3 and Rule 6, to me, are very clearly MGTOW rules. Now, there's a couple of others that come in here. Now, by the way, anybody who says, oh, we don't have rules, yeah. Everybody has rules for themselves, and it's up to you to make your own. Rule number 2, which is really jumps out at me as well, is treat yourself like there's somebody, like you are somebody that you're responsible for helping. Is there a more MGTOW rule than that? I mean, can anybody think of one? I can't. And I know Jordan Peterson didn't write this as a MGTOW book, right? Clearly. But through the lens that I'm seeing it, it very much is. So I guess that's my answer, and it's the best one that I can think of to the reasonable commentary that I'm laying out some pretty nasty, heavy stuff that's leaving people depressed and miserable and feeling like there's lost and aimless. There is a path, and it's this. Now, concerning the Me Too movement, which I've done a whole bunch of videos on, in a couple of videos ago, I had a comment from Janice Fiamengo in my comments thread, and we ended up getting into a conversation on Facebook. And what emerged from that is what I think might be an emerging social phenomenon that puts a very forceful and very final stop to the Me Too movement, which is the flippant and casual and almost gleeful destruction of innocent people's lives through phony, false accusations, bypassing any possibility of due process by just accusing and then immediately convicting a person through the media rather than through the courts, despite the fact that what they're talking about are, crimes. And I will do another video, which I'm going to record today, on what I think is a possible emerging and final forceful solution to Me Too, and I'll put that online for my Patreon viewers who want to get an early look at it, and it'll be on YouTube in a couple of days. So one thing I forgot, I was going to talk about Rule 7. If you're on a MGTOW path, that means you've departed from at least some of the normal conventions of society. Maybe a lot of them. Depends on what exactly path you are particularly plotting for yourself. And that has a small danger. And the danger is that you've departed from things that would ordinarily give your life meaning. So Rule 7, which is pursue things that are meaningful, not just what are expedient or not just pleasure. And I think that's actually not just the best, maybe it's the only remedy for misery, is to do something meaningful and difficult. Anyway, that's what that is. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, have a lovely, lovely day.